If a doctor has ever told you that your constant bathroom trips are just something you live with at your age, that's not actually true, and I nearly spent the rest of my life believing it. In a Cochrane systematic review, the gold standard of medical evidence, one specific tree bark showed real, moderate relief for the exact urinary symptoms behind that shrug. I'm 83, and I want to tell you about the year my own doctor essentially gave up and what actually happened after that. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly what it was. These days, I go through entire afternoons without a single thought about a bathroom. I took my granddaughter to the state fair last fall, hours of walking with no restroom map running in the back of my head, and I genuinely didn't notice the absence of that worry until she pointed out how relaxed I seemed. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you because I nearly accepted the shrug as the final word. At 78, my bathroom trips had become the organizing structure of my entire day. Before I left the house, I mapped the route by where the restrooms were, not by the shortest path. Before a movie, I checked seat locations near the exit. It wasn't dramatic. It was just quietly exhausting, the way carrying something heavy for years wears you down without ever staging one big collapse. I turned down a fishing trip with old friends that year, the kind of overnight trip that used to be the highlight of my summer, because I couldn't picture managing a boat with no bathroom for 6 hours. Nobody made me feel bad about it. I just quietly said I wasn't up for it, and let them assume it was about my knees, which was easier than explaining the truth. That's the part I think people miss about a problem like this. It doesn't announce itself as one dramatic loss. It shows up as 100 small declines, dressed up as other excuses, until you've quietly shrunk your own life without ever consciously deciding to. Nobody sits you down and asks you to sign off on the shrinking. It just happens, one small avoidance at a time, until the smaller life is simply the only one you remember choosing. I brought it up at my regular checkup, expecting some kind of plan. My doctor nodded, said this was common at my age, and moved the conversation along to my blood pressure. 15 minutes, a dozen things to cover, and my bathroom trips got filed under, well, that happens, before we'd even really discussed it. I want to be fair to him. He's not a bad man, and he's not lying to me for money, the way some people want to believe. He's got a packed schedule and a checklist, and a topic like this one tends to get the shortest end of that short stick. I've sat in that waiting room enough times to understand the math from his side, too. Blood pressure, cholesterol, whatever new concern showed up that year, and somewhere in there, if there's time left, the thing I actually wanted to ask about. There usually wasn't time left. There rarely is. I don't say that as an excuse for him. I say it because understanding the math changed how I approach every appointment since. But that happens isn't an explanation. It's a shrug dressed up as medical advice, and I accepted it for longer than I'm proud of, because I didn't know there was anything else to ask for. Here's what nobody explained to me. The prostate wraps around the urethra, and as it enlarges, which happens gradually in most men, it can narrow that passage and interfere with how completely the bladder empties. That's the mechanical piece behind the constant trips. It's not that my bladder got weak with age, it's that the exit got tighter, and a partially blocked exit means more frequent, more urgent trips, day and night. That near acceptance is exactly what reframed everything for me. The tissue causing this obstruction responds to specific plant-derived compounds that have been studied directly in real clinical trials, not just passed around as folk remedy. Researchers who compile this evidence treat it as legitimate, moderate, and worth trying before anything more invasive. For 11 years, the bathroom ran my nights. Up at midnight, up at 2, up again at 5, a weak little stream each time and never quite empty. I'd lie there, staring at the ceiling, knowing I'd drag through the next day half awake. I thought it was just age. It wasn't. Here's what no one ever sat me down to explain. The prostate crowds the channel your urine runs through, so the bladder never fully drains, it just fills right back up within the hour. That's why you go and go again. It was never weakness. It was never getting old. And the pills they kept handing me, they left me dizzy every time I stood, gave me that strange, dry finish where almost nothing came, and the nights never changed. But there is a gentle way to help that bladder empty the way it's meant to, without any of that. At 83, I finally sleep through the night again. I'll show you exactly what in this video, and if you want the simple support I personally use, There's a free presentation linked in the description below. So here's what actually happened after the shrug. I found out about Pygeum africanum, an extract from the bark of the African plum tree used for prostate symptoms for generations before anyone had the tools to explain why. A Cochrane systematic review, pooling multiple controlled trials, found that Pygeum africanum is well tolerated and provides moderate relief from the urinary problems caused by an enlarged prostate, including nighttime urination, peak flow, and the sensation of incomplete emptying. I want to be honest about the word moderate. This isn't a dramatic, overnight transformation the way some products promise. It's a real, measured improvement across multiple trials, which is a very different and more trustworthy thing than a single flashy testimonial. I'd been burned before by things that promised dramatic results and delivered nothing, so honestly, the modesty of the claim is part of what made me trust it. Real physiology rarely produces overnight miracles. It produces gradual, measurable shifts, and a systematic review that says moderate relief instead of cure was, oddly, the more convincing thing to read. I started taking a standardized extract daily, the same concentration used in the actual trials, rather than guessing at a random dose from whatever bottle looked promising on a shelf. I added the rest of a system around it. Vegetables and fruit sources of beta-sitosterol, a compound with its own separately documented benefit for the same symptoms. A short walk most mornings, since regular movement reduces the tension that can worsen the tightening around the urethra. Less alcohol in the evening, since it irritates the bladder on top of the mechanical obstruction. None of these felt like a project once I actually got them going. The walk became something I looked forward to rather than a chore on a list, and the food changes were small enough that my wife barely noticed them shifting into our normal meals. It was the layering, not any single piece, that actually moved the needle over those 2 months. I gave the whole combination a full 2 months before I trusted the change was real, matching roughly the timeline the actual research described, rather than judging it after a disappointing week the way I had with things before it. That patience was the hardest part, if I'm honest. Years of quick disappointments had trained me to expect immediate results or nothing at all, and unlearning that particular expectation took almost as much deliberate effort as actually building the new habits did in the first place. I nearly quit around the 3-week mark, convinced I'd wasted my money on another product that wouldn't deliver, the same story I'd told myself a dozen times before with a dozen other things. What kept me going that time was rereading the actual review, not my own vague memory of it, and reminding myself the researchers themselves had described a gradual timeline, not an overnight one. That distinction mattered more than I expected. My wife and I flew out to visit my brother last spring, a 5-hour flight I'd been dreading for over a year, mentally rehearsing the aisle seat and the timing of the beverage cart. This time I sat by the window, dozed off twice, and didn't think about the bathroom once. I think about a man named Edward who wrote in, 68, who told me his own doctor had used the exact phrase, "Well, that happens at your age," almost word for word, in the same rushed tone mine had. He said hearing that a real systematic review existed behind an actual alternative, not just another appointment ending in a shrug, was what finally got him looking for something concrete. Edward told me he'd printed a summary of the Cochrane review and brought it to his next appointment, mostly out of curiosity about what his doctor would say. His doctor's reaction wasn't defensive, just mildly surprised, admitting there simply hadn't been time to go into it during a regular visit. That confirmed what I'd already come to believe. It was never a conspiracy, just a structural gap nobody had bothered to fill. He said the whole experience changed how he approaches every appointment since, always bringing one specific written question instead of a vague list, since specificity was what actually got a real answer, instead of another rushed generality on the way out the door. He told me he'd shown that printed review to his own son, too, who'd been quietly assuming the same "just your age" line applied to him already, decades earlier than it should have. If you're on medication for your prostate, your blood pressure, or your heart, please hear this clearly. Nothing here replaces your treatment, and you should never stop or change a medication on your own. Mention anything new to your doctor every time. What I want you to walk away with is this. When a doctor says that happens, what they usually mean is that one 15-minute appointment has run out of time. That's not the same as there being nothing left to find. I think about how close I came to just accepting that shrug and stopping there, the way so many men do, mistaking the boundary of one rushed conversation for the boundary of what's actually possible for the rest of a life. It would have been the easier path, honestly, and nobody would have blamed me for taking it. A doctor's white coat carries a certain authority, and questioning it felt almost presumptuous at first. But authority within a 15-minute slot isn't the same as authority over everything that might actually help, and learning to hold both of those truths at once, respect and persistence together, was its own kind of lesson. So here's what I use: a few drops every single morning. And let me be honest about why it works. One herb on its own nudges one thing, but your prostate answers best when several signals are calmed at the same time. The flow, the emptying, the pressure behind it. That's why what I take brings them together, concentrated, working as one, not a single ingredient hoping to do everything. Stronger stream, full emptying, quiet nights, your freedom back. And none of the trade-offs, no dizziness, no dry finish, nothing taken from you as a man. It's linked right under this video. Go see it for yourself. It won't replace good sleep or your own doctor. It's there to support your body. At 83, I sleep through. It is not too late for you. I think about the man I was, mapping every outing around a restroom he might need. And I think about the man I am now, who doesn't think about it at all. That's not vanity. That's dignity. Being present in a room instead of quietly managing an exit strategy. If a doctor has ever handed you a shrug instead of an actual answer and you kept quiet about it anyway, tell me about it in the comments. And if this kind of honest, specific explanation is useful to you, go ahead and subscribe. There's more of this ahead every single week, and I genuinely read every comment myself.